Hello, everybody. It's another season, another reason to talk about Game of Thrones. So I am huddling in my office with Ryan Stevens. Hi. With Jeremy Hoffman.
Hello, hello.
And with Marco Rosado.
Hello there.
And I am Brandon Jones, and we are here. This is GameTrailers of Thrones, Season 2, talking about Season 4, which is about Book 3. And we had our first episode last night. And I thought it was really great, but we're going to get together and actually watch the episode. You're not going to watch it because we can't host it, but we're going to watch scenes from it and recall the stuff that we really liked. So just right off the bat, reviewing it, Mr. Hoffman, what did you think first episode?
I loved it. Ryan was over. We had a couple people over last night to watch it, and I think it might be the funniest episode. Like, I don't know if I think they've just upped their dialogue. Like, everything was so much snappier. There was a lot... I don't want to call them jokes, but it just, like, there was a lot more kind of crowd reaction. We had 12 people over last night watching it, and there was, like, a lot of, like, having to pause and go back and grab something because there's some really funny lines.
One line I want to remember is, what does Tywin say to Jamie when he leaves after he gives him the sword? He says, like, someone without a hand will need all the help he can get.
It was like someone without a knight without a hand and a family are going to need
all
no
the family's going to need all the help he can get. Which I don't remember Gurm writing that,
no.
You know, so like that's a great example. What the show does well a lot of the times is they come up with like closer lines where they'll have a scene where it's like this scene was much longer in the book, but we can't afford to do that for the show, so we have to sum up basically what happened, like basically where these 2 or 3 characters stand against each other, and I thought that was a good example of that. You know, like I like when the show does a good job of that.
Well, I mean, the whole show does a really good job of taking characters' intentions from the books and kind of summarizing them down, boiling them down. Like, and I know they change a lot of things, and we talk about that a lot, is like, how is this change? How is this different? And it's like, sure, the plot's different, but I don't think any of the characters, why they're doing anything is different. They still feel just like the characters from the books.
So right now we're watching the episode, another kick in the balls, just right off the bat, in case you don't hate the Lannisters enough. The sword that we begun the entire show with, the sword that killed Ned Stark, taken out back and disintegrated.
Well, this is Tywin really just decimating the Stark line. So he's, they've killed Robb, they've killed Ned. They think some of the girls are, they think Garya's gone. Bran and Rickon, to their knowledge, are dead. Yep. And now he's taking their sword, their family sword, and melting it down.
Yeah, I think like that entire prologue sequence was setting him up as this is the boss. He's the bad guy of the season.
See, but that's the thing is like, when I read the books and when I watched the show, I never actually hate Tywin. You know?
Well, I don't really hate anybody.
There's some characters that are a little more despicable. I kind of hate Sansa, but that's because I'm a misogynist asshole.
Damn you, Sansa.
But he always seems very, he's like, he would have been the guy who read Sun Tzu's Art of War, right? Like, he is just he
would have been the guy that wrote Art of War. Like,
but you think back to his scenes when he's with Arya and he doesn't know who she is.
Yeah.
But there's that kind of like, maybe not tenderness, but like there's this sort of kind of like respect
he admires
kind
her.
of going on. He sees things. If anything, the only time I'm ever actually really upset with him as a character in the book is when he's ridiculously dismissive of Tyrion, which because he has all this baggage from him killing his wife when he was born.
And to move on to the next scene, he's dismissive of Jamie. And, that's interesting that he's such a smart tactician, but he can't, he didn't get anywhere with any of his kids.
Well, it's weird when you think that, like, Tywin's almost one of the most...
Could have probably got to second base with Cersei.
Hey-oh.
Tywin's probably
That's the way we do things at King's Landing.
God. He's probably one of the most straightforward characters in the whole series. Like, his intentions, his plan, where he wants to get, right? Like, he's very black and white.
Whenever
you don't know how
blamed,
he's going to get there, but his end goal. It's not like you don't know what Littlefinger's up to half the time. You don't really know what Tyrion's up to. You don't know what a lot of these characters are up to. Tywin's in just to protect the family line, and he'll do anything he can. He'll kill anyone he can to do that.
And when he's sneaky about it and then called on it, he totally admits. He's like when Tyrion came to him and was like, really, at the wedding, all of those people? He's like, okay, should we have a big battle where we would lose 10 times that amount on both sides? I mean, what was the better thing to do?
So we've got the scene here, and we've got Tywin and Jamie talking. This is they couple kind of book scenes get boiled down into one with this.
I think this episode is like super Lannister centric.
Yep.
Like there's no Littlefinger. Is there?
Well, I was going to get into that later.
Point,
who wasn't in this episode?
Yeah, at this point in the book, Littlefinger is also MIA. So,
but not in the show yet.
In the show he's taken off. We just don't know where he's at. For
Here,
sure.
like what happened?
Doesn't he get on his ship
got on
and
the
he's
boat
gone?
And he left. You're right.
Where's
yeah.
he at? Right.
Right.
Okay.
So the reveal of that, I'm assuming, will be next week.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other characters, as this scene's going on, we could talk about them, but it's like...
Did you know Jamie is 40?
Yeah. Which seems really old. Like, I thought...
So that means Tyrion's 32, right? And they
roughly, yeah.
The actor or the characters?
The character says it's last night he's 40, so
Yeah,
they age everyone up a little bit. But once again, this is just a really good scene between these two. They're explaining kind of the whole Valyrian steel thing and why it matters to people that maybe missed it. This felt like a really good episode of a recap of like the last 3 seasons to set everyone in place, but also move plot forward.
Yeah, I think it was the strongest of the premieres, excluding the series premiere.
Right.
Because the other 2 season premieres were kind of clunky.
Yeah.
And there were some exposition areas that were kind of clunky, like especially Dario, but that's what can you do about that? They recast the guy. But besides that, I think like it was a good recap of everything that's happened up to now.
So then, of course, we get the huge, long, slow reveal of everybody's favorite character on the show, and we
Pod.
Yeah, exactly.
Potter got a haircut.
Yeah, Pod got a little thick. It feels like he's been working out. So
and we could talk about that too. Which actually, that was a big concern I had with Arya. It was like, how consistent is this going to be going from season 3? Because we haven't really passed that much time. We're still in book 3, even though we're in season 4.
And
we're
like book 5.
A little bit of book. Yeah, they're jumping. Well, I mean,
with Theo, right?
Right. Like the thing with that is like, in the books, Theon disappears for a while, and what happens, and then everything we saw last season with him pops up. So that was all happening at the same time. We just see that as a flashback. So now we're just kind of they're not doing the flashback stuff. They're really just moving forward. But this scene leads into kind of my favorite. I think one of my favorites from last night. And one of the characters I've been waiting for, the Red Viper. So he's this kind of badass character in the book. He's coming to King's Landing with a giant chip on his shoulder, and he's ready to fuck some shit up. So
fuck some dudes too.
We've been introduced to the Lannisters as this major threat, and now you have this new guy come in that doesn't give a fuck.
The door
and is gonna mess with them.
So do you think we have some reason to hate the Lannisters? Is that what you're saying? That like for some reason we should hold a grudge against them?
Well, I think a lot of people do, and right now this is the guy that probably has the most power to mess with them.
I really like how they introduce this character. Like every point of what makes him a good character is shown in this episode.
Yep.
Like the womanizing thing, like how he's ruthless and vengeful.
Hits the arteries.
Yeah, he hit the artery.
I will say though, 10 minutes before we got full frontal female nudity. They really took their sweet time this season.
We got a dick grab too.
This is true.
She's feisty.
But I wonder. Is
that leg bend?
Did we meet him in the whorehouse in the book?
No, but he should have been. This is one of those characters that we should have seen all of last season, and I think they were like, "There's too many characters. We can't have this happen." He's coming into town for Joffrey's wedding, which looks like it's going to be next episode or the episode after.
Probably both, I think.
And yeah, I agree. I think it'll probably be split. And so he was there at the very beginning of book 3. So he's one of these characters we've been waiting for. So this whole scene between him and in the whorehouse and the one that leads into him and Tyrion really explain the whole Lannister Martell issue in a very quick, concise way, and everyone was caught up on it. I was talking to some people that hadn't read the books last night, and they all kind of understood what was going on.
And the one thing, like Dan was watching this episode with me, and he didn't get he wants to kill the Mountain, and the Mountain killed his sister, and yada yada yada. And since those characters have never been on screen or very limited on screen, like the Mountain, Like, for example, the Mount is a character that's
Was
really
the
important.
mountain in season 3 at all?
Not shown.
Yeah, that's
He's
what I mean.
mentioned.
Okay,
Yeah, he's mentioned
okay.
all. I mean, but same thing with the book, right? He disappears for books. You don't ever see him. You only hear rumors of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was pretty central in the war. I think he's the guy that was in charge of all the raiding of the.
But that's what I'm saying. You never see him.
Riverlands.
Wasn't
You
he-
see his
yeah.
people.
Was he running Harrenhal at one point?
He was, but he
wasn't there.
But he wasn't
You're
there.
right,
That's when
okay.
the brave companions
Yeah.
were there for him. So he's this kind of weird off-camera presence that is looming like a mountain.
But
over
my fear
the
is that
show.
when he shows up, and eventually he has to show up in the
Yeah.
season because he is one of the main antagonists in this arc. People won't remember him from the guy that cut the head of the horse.
I
in
think,
season
well,
one, for example.
but I think that's
Maybe they'll do
why.
a flashback scene. That's the guy who cut the horse in two.
I think that was the reason that there was a lot of chat between Arya and the Hound about kind of him working, the Hound working for Joffrey, and then the Hound saying he's not his brother, and there's kind of getting back into that. And I don't think in the book that the Mountain was at the wedding, but I bet he'll be at Joffrey's wedding next week in the
Okay.
show, just to kind of reintroduce him again.
Yeah. They show him
There-
throughout the season.
There might be a little clash between him and the Viper next week that isn't in the book, but I think they're gonna get him back in to get that animosity built up.
Yeah.
So dragons.
Dragons almost quicker than we saw boobs, which was nice.
Bigger dragons.
Some
Boob dragons.
real big dragons. They're not fucking around with the effects anymore. Here's where all the budget goes to, right
Well,
here.
that's the thing. Is this the only time we'll see this?
I think
That's
Because they
a
were
symptom of the
how,
show.
How often
Yeah.
were they in their cages when they were tiny?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't see them.
Yeah.
But you saw the cage and
Yeah.
you're inside the cage.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about CG for 5 seconds, it's good. It's not great, I would say.
It's TVCG,
it's
Yeah.
TVCG. You
which
can't.
is
I know.
totally fine.
Did they switch studios again, or is it the same studio from
I'm
the other
not. I'm not
seasons?
actually sure.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it's TVCG, but it's like some of the
I
best.
didn't think
Yeah.
that was going to be the goat, or is it
Yeah.
a sheep? I thought it was going to be the other thing, but I guess it's later.
No, that's percentage. I mean, are we spoiling stuff?
Let's
happens
not
later.
No, I'm just
spoil
saying.
to-
I was
yeah.
like, oh,
So the important thing that this scene leads into is the new Dario.
New
which-
Dario. So if you guys watched Treme, he was actually one of the main characters on Treme, who
I
was
see that.
really good. They've switched up Dario.
who was he on Treme?
He was the heroin.
He's the
addict.
heroin guy?
Yeah, he was a
He's from, like,
great
Belgium.
character.
Did he have a beard?
Yeah, he looks almost
He
exactly
had the
the
hot
same.
girlfriend.
He
with
was the
riddle.
guy that was on the like half Asian looking girl with the fiddle.
Ah.
It's his. Yeah. So he's
Okay.
back. He's great. He's a great HBO actor, which they do a lot. And I love the scene between him and Grey Worm here, where they're
This
kind
was
of
cool
fighting
because
for the love.
when they said they were gambling, I'm like, that doesn't seem like Grey Worm, and then you see what they're actually doing, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
And it also kind of
Is this in the book? The gamble?
No,
Okay,
it sets,
okay.
but once again, it kind of sets up that weird kind of. I don't know if it's love. I guess it's like a love
Duty
square
triangle?
at this point. Like there's a bunch of people fighting for Danny's love and her entourage
well,
here.
Danny, obviously, Forever Alone. What's his name?
Jorah.
Jorah Mormon, Forever
Right.
Alone, and
Please draw
and
that.
Dario. But is there? What's the?
Well,
other
I
part
think
of the
Grey
square?
Worm now is kind
Oh,
of.
Grey Worm,
Well,
you
in
think?
here, her affection is more than
More than-
doesn't
yeah.
want this. He couldn't do anything with the sex, anyways, right? So, but
I'm
I
glad
think,
they brought back that they're castrated, though.
Yeah.
Because it's like, look at all these fucking dudes. You know, they're crazy, and it's like, just remember what they went through.
but different Dario. Can we just talk about that?
Yeah,
for 5
different
seconds?
Dario. They do that a lot in this series. I feel like they switch them out. I think the Mountain switched. Ilan
3
Payne
times.
is switched.
As long as Hodor remains the same.
I don't think they could find a man that big anymore.
This is the biggest recast, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Easily the biggest.
Because it's a
recast.
huge aesthetic difference.
Yeah, he looks very different. Even his armor's different. And the character, we all know in the book he's got like this ridiculous blue beard. He wears lots of gold and is much more gaudy looking. But here he seems more
like a badass.
restrained,
I
more
think
like a
he-
warrior,
Yeah,
right?
the other Dario was like a model
Yep.
/ weirdo. I don't know.
So Ryan, here's your chance to talk about Sansa. How much you love her. What?
She's really tall.
She's one of the
In,
most.
in 50 words or less, why do you hate Sansa Stark?
She's just kind of whiny.
Well,
She's such a dick in the first book, and then all this bad shit. Like, she probably has some of the best or the most misfortunes piled upon her with, like, no breaks. You know, like anything that even has a silver lining is usually also it's like a horribly torrid silver lining. I don't know. I know like they tried to twist her into like a a character that you want to have some compassion for, and I guess I just never really what's that face? Just never really.
In the book,
I don't mind seeing what happens, and as far as I know, she's still breathing.
In the book, she's also just like she's the most
Naive.
typical kind of archetype fantasy princess. She's gonna get to marry the king, and it's all wonderful, and all this terrible shit's happening around her. And she's just like, I'm picking out what kind of lemon cakes I want to have at my wedding.
She's a Disney princess in Game of Thrones.
The Starks are easily like again, if you want to talk archetypes, the Starks are easily the heroes. Like every Stark, you want to stand behind, right? Even Jon Snow. I mean, Cat, all of them, and then you get to her, and she's the bastard. She's the odd one out when it comes to that stuff.
I think I always thought that when Sansa's
sack.
wolf was killed, that kind of like made her the odd Stark. Yeah, and it's kind of like I don't know if that's intentional or not, but she's the cast out.
She loses that connection for sure.
I wonder what Rickon's up to.
I mean, and
Shaggy dog.
So really,
my
the thing to notice in here, and I think it maybe a little early, is that we've got is this the part where we saw Cersei spy yet?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we
cool
get into that. That's in the scene after this. But
Okay.
I mean, yeah, Shay and Tyrion's kind of predictable. It's the same stuff that we've been seeing last
over
season.
and over.
I'm tired
Tyrion's
of
on a
Shay.
bad turn too. Like nothing's coming up for him in this episode, at all.
Yeah.
No, actually, I think this season I read somewhere that I think he has like 70 minutes of screen time.
God, that's so great.
That's a lot of Tyrion for a season.
Wow. I think it's not going to be happy for him.
Are they
I
going
don't
to
know.
dip into book 5? You think?
They have to.
No,
Right?
not
No.
him. No, they
No?
won't get to him
Okay.
in book 5.
Oh, not
Okay.
him in book 5, but later stuff.
Yeah,
with Dany
other
easily.
stuff for sure. But yeah, we won't see his book 5 stuff till later.
So we've talked about Tyrion a bit, but this scene obviously leads into Cersei and Jaime and, like you were saying, the spy. So that's interesting when they call that out, because we know there's a lot of spying that happens in King's Landing. In the books, it's always like known that it happens, but you're never really called you don't see it actually happening. But the show does do that every now and then, where you'll some scene will finish and you'll see somebody winking or hiding behind a column somewhere. So interesting that they pointed it out in this instance specifically.
Well, it's
little
also
birds.
you've got Tyrion telling Shay here, like, no, this isn't a good time. We can't do this here. We can't, people are watching. And she's like, nah, it's fine. It's like, no, people are watching.
Not to skip ahead, but I also like there's another scene when Marjorie says, oh yeah, I should have had Joffrey pick my necklace because then it could be a bunch of rat heads. And her mom says, not even here, not even with me. Shh,
Yeah.
Don't even joke about stuff like that.
The grandma is a great character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
Great actress.
The gold hand is great here with
There's some
Jaime.
We were talking about the humor. There's
Yeah.
some weird, even like physical humor with his posing and stuff like that.
Some clear Army of Darkness references being made here, which I think are great.
Really?
He's just got the glove.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was like something I missed. Because I mean, later on, not to jump ahead, but there's kind of a Wire reference.
Well, there's also I like
It's a
here.
wire.
There's a good spot here where Jaime points out that she's drinking a lot, and this continues to happen over the course of the series. She kind of starts falling down this alcoholic, day drunk
She's a lush.
hole, and it's gonna have some consequences.
She's
later.
40.
Great.
Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, Cersei. I mean, she looks okay.
No, I'm just
No.
kidding.
But great.
When me and Jeremy were watching it, there was a lot of girls watching as well,
Yeah.
and the 40 thing became a topic of
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah, it was
kind of like
what?
blew over my head,
No.
but it seemed to be something people wanted to discuss.
But great scene for those two characters to set up through this season to kind of establish that they're not in the same place they were when you first saw them.
Well, I think you see that with everyone. That's kind of everyone's spot, right? We see how everyone's changed. The Tyrion, Shay relationships changed. Jaime and Cersei has changed. Jon and Ygritte's obviously changed how they work together. It's changed. Everyone's kind of in a different spot than they were.
At the same time, though, this is the story starts branching back towards King's Landing.
Yep.
Like all these characters, like Brienne and they're all back in King's Landing, so there's less fragmentation of the story, I think, and I think that's gonna.
We're gonna see lots of different perspectives, kind of on the similar scenes.
So speaking of Ygritte, We're back with the Wildlings, and who's this guy? I got to admit, I didn't know who this guy was that came in. I forgot.
The
What,
Scar guy?
Cannibal?
Yeah.
So those are the Thanes in the book. The Thanes are considered kind of just very noble, strong warriors. They're not the cannibals.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like they've taken two of the Wildling camps and combined them into one. It's rumored that in the series that the cannibals live off Skagos, and there's a couple other places, but in the books, the Thanes are some of the most kind of, I think, powerful northern warriors, very honorable, don't like anyone fucking with them, which we see an aspect of that here, but they've added the addition of liking to eat human arms.
And scars.
They seem like bad guys on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I like the scar. I mean, the scars just kind of make them feel different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see there, quick little look that there's actually more wargs. Every kind of camp up north seems to have a warg or someone help working with them.
So on the other side of the coin with the Wildlings, we go back to Castle Black. Snow is back. Doesn't get a favorable welcome. But seems to kind of wiggle out of that. I remember that scene being much more tense, but it was definitely a lot shorter, obviously, in the show where he's...
Also, another really funny scene.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Or
don't
the
know
council,
would you call
yeah.
that a trial? I don't really know what you'd call that, but the questioning's pretty funny.
Well, and then the bald dude in there that's getting into it with him is the guy that took over the King's, or
The city guard.
the city guard in King's Landing that Tyrion banished, and he was the one also in charge when Ned dies, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, he has a really funny send-off with Tyrion in King's Landing,
Yeah.
and it's a really funny welcome.
Welcome here, where he's obviously got it out for the Starks a little bit, and
It's the same actor too.
yep,
Props.
yeah. So there's a lot of people on that council that do not like Jon Snow.
I definitely remember the line, if we cut off the heads of everybody that went down the street, to go to a brothel,
That's in the
everyone
book.
would have no
Yeah,
heads. I remember that very
that's in the
specifically
book, yeah.
in the book.
And I actually think in the book this was 2 chapters. It might have been split over a couple chapters.
This scene?
Yeah,
I don't remember it from the...
but I haven't read it in so long now.
One of the things that I think the show does really well is make jumps across the world, because it definitely does feel like a huge world, compared to a lot of, speaking of video games, RPGs we play, like Beat Bravely Default, and that's kind of a fun Fisher-Price toy world, but not really some believable huge space. And I love going from this freezing cold area immediately to King's Landing, just sitting by the beach. With Marjorie and her mom, her grandmother.
So Marjorie's father is
The Queen of Thorns.
Marjorie's father is in charge of the Martell family, and this is his mother, right?
And this is definitely a new scene that was not in the books, where Brienne...
I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, about this. So Brienne and Jamie get to King's Landing in the books, before or after the wedding?
I think they're there for the wedding.
They're there for the wedding?
I think they're there for the wedding.
Yes, I know they're there for the wedding.
Because there's Jamie... Yeah.
Jamie's in charge of security for the wedding. So I
Yeah.
remember
In the
that.
book?
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember that
Yeah.
being a fact.
Yeah.
So
and
Brienne's
we see
mission
that
was
scene later.
to get Sansa back to Winterfell.
Yep.
And
Well, to her mother, right? And
Yeah,
that's
well,
the
her mother,
argument. That's the
yeah.
argument they have in here is, where the hell would I take her?
Mm-hmm.
When Jamie and Brienne are arguing, it's there is nowhere safe for the Starks.
Okay.
So this revisiting of Renly dying and of Brienne knowing that Renly was killed by Stannis via this magic spell, what are we getting out of this direct connection between Brienne and Marjorie here?
I think
That's a good question.
That's
What is
actually
this going to
really-
blossom into? Why did they feel the need to put this in when obviously screen time is very valuable?
I
wanted
think
that statue.
Yeah, they wanted that awesome statue. I would totally get that statue. I want a small version of that statue for my desk. It's amazing.
I'm sure there's gonna be
Yeah,
some
someone-
HBO
someone-
merchandising.
Listen, someone 3D print me that statue, and I'll send you some Cheez-Its or something. We'll work out a deal. Hit me up on Twitter. I know one of you could do it.
But it's
So-
a statue of Joffrey.
It's the
with
Joffrey with
boar.
the
Yes.
It's so good. It's hilarious. This is an interesting scene, and I don't know if it's more of a creating Southern alliances type thing, but yeah, it's felt out of place for me just because I don't know what their motivation is.
I would say both of these characters seem bigger on the screen than they did in the
Definitely.
books, and maybe they're just trying to live that aspect of them up a bit more.
Possibly, yeah. I think and
Because Brienne was more of a foil for Jamie.
just remember that in And before we get to those two, when we see Marjorie and the Queen of Thorns is very well versed in jewelry.
Yeah.
It's just one thing I'll say.
We move on from there, also staying at King's Landing, to Joffrey and his pop, which I watched this with my wife Amanda last night, who will probably come in on a future episode of the show to talk about her infatuation with Westeros. And she mentioned that she's like, I forget that it's his dad.
Yeah.
I forget that. And this scene is a great, again, like establishing his relationship with Cersei, a great kind of launch pad for their relationship. You kind of forget. It's like, that's got a sting, like having this little insolent brat, and it's like you have so many excuses to just reach across the table and just slap him across the face, but you can't.
I think deep down, Joffrey knows that Jaime's his dad in the show.
I think he knows. I think he has to know at this point.
Which makes this scene with him snarking at his dad even more.
He's such a fucking brat.
But Tywin did lay the smackdown on Joffrey a couple times last season.
Yeah,
he's like the only one who can rein him in.
Because
the mom can't.
Everyone's terrified of
Tyrion,
Tywin.
when he's around, stands up to him. But yeah,
this was a great scene. There was one point that if you're a big fan of the series, that one of the knights they mention is Sir Duncan the Tall, and he's actually the main character in the short stories.
Duncan and Egg?
The Duncan Egg stories. So there's 3 of those out there.
Is he mentioned, like, without getting spoilery, is he mentioned in the books?
No, there's a lot of...
Isn't he, like, brought in with Bran's weird subplot?
There's a connection between him and Bran, and there's a connection between him and Brienne, actually.
Okay.
So back to the east, right?
Essos.
Wouldn't that be in the east? And a little bit of flirtation with Dario. I mean, we got a little bit of that last season.
Yep.
And one of the first, when he came and brought him the heads of his compatriots, she was totally bare-ass naked. So that to me was a little more flirtatious than even just here's some flowers.
Yeah,
honestly, romantic.
Honestly, I feel like they just did a scene so that people understand who he is. They're like, we switched the character out, and we're going to hammer it home one more time that it's that dude.
That's safe.
And they name drop him.
A lot. They awkwardly call him out a few times just to make sure, which is smart for the viewers that don't that haven't read the books. And it's also great to see the scene of the not great to see the scene of the kids being dead.
Sorry?
Why did the other actor drop out?
That was my curiosity earlier.
Idea.
Okay.
I think they recast because people didn't like the other.
I know people didn't like the other guy, because he was
that girl's
weird.
pose, by the way, is so freaky. Yeah, the dead girl hammered to the mile marker. Ugh. Sorry.
No,
it's really provocative.
It's totally creepy, and it's one of those. I love that.
And the girl's probably 7?
Yeah.
8.
And I think it was smart to write, because I remember that from the books very distinctly. Every time she kept going to a new place to conquer it, I was like, is this the one with all the kids that are hammered up? Yep. With their fingers pointing down the road? And I think it's just great to have fuel for her journey, because at this point, it was much longer in the books of just oh my god, more Daenerys just marching across the desert. And even in the show, you're like, okay, where is this going? When is she going to stop doing this and just get over and actually attack King's Landing? So with this, it's nice to get ooh, yeah, I want to go get the guy who did that. I want somebody who takes kids and hammers them.
Sets up some villains.
I want her to go kick their ass. So it's nice to have some fuel there.
One thing I remember about the book clearly is that every time Dany goes to conquer a city, which happens twice in the previous season and will happen again here, is that the chapter starts with her in front of the city.
Yep. And
you turn the page and it's like Daenerys is looking at X city and Y city, and they flash back into and on the way there they saw the corpses, blah blah blah, and she wants vengeance. And here they're kind of make stuff up of her journey towards the city.
What also makes it feel like she's not jumping around as much for the viewer, right? That they don't get the location of now she's here. It's 300 miles from this place. It's adds this, and also, as Joan said, her shit's really slow at points, so it kind of just spreads it out.
So we already visited Sansa, who we won't talk about her anymore, but obviously Jamie and Brienne get back together.
Did this scene remind anyone else of Friday the 13th?
I think it's supposed to remind you of kind of
And this is kind of funny too. Another good point about this being a very comedic episode. This was very silly with Dantas.
I don't think that's intentional on this part though.
I think it's more of a...
It's inside of her mind.
Yeah,
but it still comes across a little silly.
It's very silly, especially if you know the books and you know.
Well, we're also
waiting for him to show up.
We're coming off a scene where she just found out that the rest of her family is now dead. She's the last living Stark, and she's walking alone, and she thinks she's getting chased down. I can see why she's a little terrified, right? So this is an interesting scene. We haven't seen Ser Dantos since she saved him, pretty much.
And he was just in that one episode, which is rare for the show to do, to bring in an actor just for an episode to introduce them, and then they don't come back anytime that season. That's rare.
So for those of you that forget, she saved Ser Dantos on Joffrey's name day by saying it was bad luck to kill someone on your name day. He is now a court jester, and in this scene he gives her a necklace that... This is very different than the book. This is, I believe, the one kind of major change that we've seen.
It's mild, I think.
I believe it's Lady Olenna.
Olenna gives... Oh.
I believe that's who gives her the necklace in the book.
Okay. Which would be a very random character on the show. So, I think that's safe.
They've chit-chatted a little bit, right? It's one of those, teas that she has.
Yeah.
She gives her a purple hair.
Yeah, it wasn't a necklace.
It was for her hair. Yeah, it was like a... So, I'm wondering if she'll also get that, or if this is just something... different, but it was one of those things that I was like, that's interesting that they've done this. He's going to be a more important character a little bit later in the season, so it's nice to see that they're kind of hinting at that now.
He does look drunk.
Yeah, I think the guy's trying a little bit too hard.
Doing
a little bit too much compared to other really subtle actors on the show.
You think he's going to be... He has to be throughout, at least.
I'm not trying to spoil the show for everyone that's listening, but yes,
all right.
He's gonna be a very important character. What I'm assuming the next hour to hour and a half of the series. Let's say that.
Let's end on a strong note.
Because we're watching it now, I want to point out where it's 47 minutes in, which means this is without a doubt the longest scene in the entire show, the very last scene.
And I would take a whole series. I know that they're running, getting way too close to catching up to Gurm. I would just do a whole series of just these two riding through the woods talking shit. Just do it. It's so good.
Best lines, only cunts name their swords.
There's some good stuff.
Amazing.
And this is just a powerful scene. It's once again you see kind of changing relationships. She hated the Hound, and now they're becoming more comfortable with each other, and they're kind of growing together. And she has some major changes. This is the second time now that we've seen Arya kill. I think the second time total that she's killed, and she's our little badass that... She's my favorite character in the series. She really is. Her and Tyrion are my two favorites. So every scene with her I love, and the Hound is just such a asshole, but so deadly.
He's like an anti-hero, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were yelling at the TV last night when they're in the pub here, and she's just kind of standing there watch as the Hound's getting the shit beat out of him.
But this is
we're screaming at the TV.
This shot is hilarious to me.
This is the shot of them peeking through.
Yeah. Just perfectly proportioned. It's just funny.
Oh, gaps in the woods.
Yeah.
Same actor for
Polivar.
But this scene is an interesting mirror of stuff that we had already seen. This scene is kind of an homage to the Tickler scene from the books, which isn't a spoiler because the people who watched the show saw the Tickler die last season because the show changed it and made him one of the victims of Jaqen H'ghar when she was in Harrenhal. Right? That was Harrenhal, correct?
Yep.
So now we kind of get a different version of that scene where, again, basically what the scene was is that her and the Hound are, in an inn or a bar or someplace.
Well, I think it's the main.
Interior.
It's the inn of the crossroads, right? This is the
inn.
At least in the book, this is the same inn that the cat captures Tyrion. This is the same. It's outside of this inn that they.
But it's not this one.
It's the same.
It's not this one in the show. It's not.
It's that one with the brick. It's kind of made of cobblestone.
Yeah, they've changed it, but in the book, it all kind of happens. This is that main inn that everything.
It's the inn of the crossroads. Right. It makes sense. But in the scene where she kills the Tickler, it's a very frantic scene. She's yelling a lot, and she jumps on his back and stabs him multiple times. And in this, she's ice cold, extremely cool. So like you said, it's the second time we've seen her kill. So I thought it was interesting that the show set up this second kill as she was able to do it very calmly and controlled. And you could see her really enjoying it, which is terrible.
I think the main thing to notice here with Arya is she takes on a character. So when she decides she's going to kill in this scene and she is doing that final stab, she's repeating the lines and she's taking on a persona of someone else. And for where she's going to go later in the series, that's a very kind of big moment for her. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I think a lot of people know what I'm saying. At least everyone in the room does. And it's just kind of, I got chills when I saw her do that, because it's where you want her to go.
This is not really spoiling anything, but this is one of her last scenes in the book, in book 3.
Oh, yeah. Like, we see, like...
I thought this was going to happen, like, halfway through the season, and happen in the first episode.
So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to her, or where we're going to go with Arya, because she's going to make a pretty major move, I'd say, in the next... They may expand this out.
No,
with
this
her
is going to be...
Hound.
I think it's the Hound and Arya adventures.
And if we
for
get
a
this for the
season.
whole season,
That's
that'll
cool.
be incredible,
Wow.
and I'm in. In the book, right after the scene, they pretty much... Something happens, and they have to split up, and... but I think we're going to see a lot more of them together.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
mean-
totally... She's going to get her fighting training from the Hound, which is incredible.
Personality
This is
training.
really stupid to say, but I love the way these the beer mugs look.
Oh, it's all about the aesthetics, man.
No, they look really cool. Like, I mean, they really caught my eye. Like, when he drinks the other guy's drink and stuff, they just look really... I don't know. The set design's really good.
They don't. I mean,
They're all, like,
you didn't
uneven.
make anything, man. The first episode of Game Trailers of Thrones Hawk.
I didn't know we were doing this. I had
Stealth launch.
Well,
a 15
there's an episode-
course meal last night with 3 different themed drinks. What do you want from
Lemon
me?
cake.
There's no leftovers. You couldn't.
There
run
were.
anything?
I was. Running, I got up. Yeah.
So there's an episode next Sunday.
Yes.
So you maybe
and,
bring something.
and I'm gonna be in New Orleans next week, so
well,
I'm going on my normal
Well, maybe
vacation.
then I could
so.
bring Amanda in. She
Yeah.
can talk about the next episode. But do we want to bring in the spoiler dragons or anything spoilery you want to talk about, or we want to wrap it up?
I think we're pretty good. I didn't think we needed to really spoil much.
Got a little spoil. Got a little hot, a little steamy at the end there.
We
as
got-
far as,
but I think we
talking
warned
about
people.
her and the Hound.
But
But
it's
it is
that
near the
you
end of
see
the-
coming. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not really spoiling that something's going to happen down the road.
Yeah, never get comfortable with anything on this show, I think, is generally a rule.
So characters, let's go real quick. People we haven't seen. So
Varys.
Varys we haven't seen. We haven't seen Littlefinger, who at this point in the book is also kind of MIA. So I think that's acceptable.
The Boltons.
Yeah.
No Bolton.
No
Even though they were in
Theon-
the credit,
No
in the intro.
Theon, no Boltons.
Hodor.
We haven't seen anyone.
Bran. We haven't seen
Hodor.
Bran yet.
Who are the fish people?
We haven't seen. Yeah, we've seen
Oh, right.
none of the Greyjoys yet.
The Greyjoys, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Squid
next
people.
Squid, sorry,
next
yeah.
week we're gonna see some Greyjoys. I'm hoping, and according to the trailer, we see Bran.
Well, we will see. And how many episodes do we get? The 12 for
9.
season 10. No, it's
Or
gonna be
sorry,
9
10,
for this
so
season.
9
9
left
more.
is what I was.
Okay, so there's episode 1 of the show and episode 1 of this show. Thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully we'll be back next week. And because we've pared down our resources a little bit to only do this audio only, hopefully it'll be easier to get all y'all in together to talk about it. But we liked it. I definitely give it a thumbs up for the first episode.
It's the best first episode since the series premiere, for sure.
Agreed.
All right.
What is...
Well, we'll see you for episode 2.